United States Navy veteran who served at the highest enlisted levels of leadership. As Fleet Master Chief over U.S. Naval Forces Europe and U.S. Naval Forces Africa and their surrounding waters, he directed and influenced over 60,000 service members, civilians, contractors, and families. He is the first Black person to ever be selected as Fleet Master Chief.
I don't know if you can tell, but I am blushing to the nth level. When I joined the Navy, it was really... my intention was to serve 20 years, retire at the age of 37, and go back home. So I should have gone to ADP, Automated Data Processing, which is a computer room. But instead, after he looked over my record, he looked up at me and he said, "Yeah, I don't. So you, boy, are going to go to this other division." Interesting thing about that, Kim, is that what he probably meant to harm me, what he probably meant for bad, turned out for my good.
Relationships are so important.
Let me tell you, relevant relationships, from my perspective, is that sweet elixir of the world. Climate is that feeling that people get when they pull up to the place of employ. For me, I was standing in front of the crew on board Harry S. Truman, the aircraft carrier, and someone asked about an open door policy, and I was like, "I do not. Nope, I don't have an open door policy."
What do you think about my statement about ownership, about it coming from within, that internal push? What do you think about that?
Love it. I'm stealing it. I can't wait to use that. That intrinsic drive is, from our perspective, is what allows our resilience to be fortified.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the KimUnity Soulutions podcast, the only podcast that's inspiring leadership and humanity within and beyond the workplace. It is so good to be with you all. Of course, I am your host, Kim, the SME. I am always speaking from my experiences. Today is like no other. Today, I have a special guest. He is not just a leader. He is a distinguished United States Navy veteran who served at the highest enlisted levels of leadership. As Fleet Master Chief over U.S. Naval Forces Europe and U.S. Naval Forces Africa and their surrounding waters, he directed and influenced over 60,000 service members, civilians, contractors, and families. He is the first Black person to ever be selected as Fleet Master Chief. He was appointed by President Joe Biden to serve as the commissioner of the American Battle Monuments Commission. He spearheaded the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell for every crew member under his command. And I'm not done yet. He is the author of Building Resilience for Hybrid Success, Anchored in Adaptability. And now, through his company, KimUnity Soulutions, he now takes all of those real-world experiences and high-pressure leadership lessons and translates them into practical strategies for organizations, executives, and teams through his leadership development training and coaching, teaching on the importance of being agile, responsive, and robust while leading with integrity. Today, I welcome to the KimUnity Soulutions podcast, the Honorable United States Navy Fleet Master Chief Retired Raymond D. Kemp Sr. Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
I am I don't know if you can tell, but I am blushing to the nth level. That was what a solid. I had a long career, and you're reading those things down. I was like, wow, that sounds good. Who you talking about? That sounds real good.
You did good. You did good.
Oh,
you did good.
Mercy. One thing I will say, Kim, you said I was the first Black Fleet Master Chief. I was the first Black Fleet Master Chief for Navy, Europe, and Africa. There's a total of 4 Fleet Master Chiefs in the Navy, and through history, I was technically the 3rd one, but the first one over in Europe and Africa.
Thank you so much for that correction.
You rocked that intro. I was like, oh, okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that correction. For sure. And you're the one who's made all those accomplishments. So
Thank you.
I
Thank you. Thank you. It's a
welcome
pleasure to
you.
be here. Let me get to that part. It's an honor, privilege, and pleasure to be here. Glad to know you. And so glad that just took the time to have the chance to meet you that evening. I think it was at the Arlington Black Chamber of Commerce where we met initially.
Yes, it
Uh,
was.
what a rewarding time it has been since then, from the cards to, and maybe we'll talk about this later, but I'm honored. I mean that thing to be here. That's for real.
I appreciate that, Raymond. I feel the same way. So thank you so much. Going through that list of all of your accomplishments, you were born and raised in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma?
Born in the great nation of Texas, raised in Oklahoma.
Oh, raised in Oklahoma. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
But I do know that you enlisted into the Navy at the age of 17.
true.
Did you see this forecoming? Did you know at the age of 17 that you could make it this far, that you wanted to be, at the highest level that you're
Mm.
at now? Tell us about that.
No, no way. When I joined the Navy, it was really my intention was to serve 20 years, retire at the age of 37, and go back home, sit on the front porch, and wave at people driving by. That in the town that I'm from, which is El Reno, just a little bit to the west of Oklahoma City, where my grandmother and them lived. So that was the plan. Make it to the level of E5, because in those days, you could at the level of E5 you could retire, and that was the goal. But, the best laid plans of mice and men, are practically the same. When I entered into the Navy and kind of figured out how things worked, then it was, well, let's just go hard and see what happens. And to answer your question, there's no way in the world that I would have ever in my wildest dreams, probably not even until my 30th year, imagined that I would be a fleet master chief.
I'm kind of speechless because I grew up hearing my father tell stories of how he was drafted into the military. He was in the Army.
Mm, yeah.
And I know that you went in at the age of 17, the same year that they
Martin Luther
how do I
King's
word
birthday became a holiday.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. They finally observed it and made it a holiday, even though it was, put into law 3 years earlier.
Right, right. Yep. And, the interesting thing about that is that, again, 1986, I mean, I was born in the 60s, raised in the 70s, joined the Navy in 1986. And my first interaction with leadership on the aircraft carrier USS Independence, which was my first ship in Philadelphia, was very aggressive. I mean, there's this heavy set guy sitting at this table looking at me saying, I think you probably think you're pretty smart, huh, boy? And I thought, that's peculiar. I mean, my record's right in front of you. I graduated top of the class, and I chose to come here based on the grade that I had attained, through my professional training. And I said, well, I was top 5 in the class, which I knew he knew. But there was a point in that conversation, because what happens is you check into the command and then you get assigned to where you're going to go. I was what we these days call an information systems technician. And so I should have gone to ADP, the automated digital processing unit, but automated data processing, I'm sorry, which is a computer room. But instead, after he looked over my record, he looked up at me and he said, yeah, I don't allow no niggas in the computer room. So you, boy, are going to go to this other division. And I thought, man, it's weird thing. It's 1986. Didn't he hear? Martin Luther King's birthday is a holiday. And, again, I'm born in Texas, raised in Oklahoma. So that language meant nothing to me. In fact, there's a poem I learned as a kid that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words would never harm me. So that language meant a total zero to me, but it was perplexing again, because as you mentioned, it was the first year Martin Luther King's birthday was celebrated as a federal holiday. And so he said, you ask that boy out there at the table where to go and he'll tell you where to go. And so I was like, okay. And I went on in. The interesting thing about that, Kim, is that what he probably meant to harm me, what he probably meant for bad, turned out for my good, because he had been sending everybody else down there. Remember, my goal was to make it to the level of E5. Well, when I went down to this particular division that he sent me to, there were all the other blacks had been sent down there as well. guess what? There was a number of E5s, and not only were there other E5s there was an E6, and I was like, "Oh," because I had never seen anyone at that rank, and it's just I was junior, so I hadn't been around much, but the fact that there were E5s there and an E6, I thought, "Oh, man, well, I know, I mean, we're black. I know they're gonna tell me how to make it, so I'm good. I am good." So, again, what he meant for my harm, can you hear me, turned out for my good in a way that he could never imagine.
Always. That is always how it works. It's always for our good. And you led right into where I was going with that because in my research, I saw that you were an E5 for 7 years. Is that correct?
Oh, you just research. Oh my
I did some
goodness.
research. I did some research. And so you were
Oh,
there
that
for
is
7
funny.
years. And the way that it was written, I would take it as the opportunity was not yet available for you to move up.
Mm.
But because of the people that you were around, you began to create relationships with them and pour
Mm.
into them and show your leadership skills with them. And then you were noticed for promotion. Is that correct?
Wow, that's very perceptive. It's pretty close. And so there is a very competitive pathway for promotion in the Navy. And just so for your listeners who may not understand, is in the Navy you have to perform at a certain level. So there's performance evaluations, and then there's a competency exam, a test that has to be taken. And in the 80s, early 90s, the era was still, the military ain't no place for a black man, and them tests is skewed to where you can't win. And yeah, I won't argue those points. I mean, it was what it was at the time, but the promotion competition was extremely high. And so test scores had to be really high. My performance was excellent. So I got great performance evaluations, but my test scoring was not high enough to make it into promotion. And so the average time for someone in that profession, again, in those days, probably 10 years to make it to the rank of E6. Well, I mean, I was, bumming and grinding, trying to make it so, but in my mind, remember, I initially started thinking if I can make it to E5, that means I can make it to 20 and I'm good. And so I made it to E5 very quickly within the 3-year period. And then 7 years, so at the 10-year mark is when I was able to finally eclipse the test requirement. And that came from building relevant relationships with people who helped me to study and find other ways to learn so I could get advanced.
Relationships are so important.
Whew, let me tell you, relevant relationships, from my
Relevantly.
perspective, is that sweet elixir of the world. If you can develop relevant relationships, then you can sip from a cup that will never run dry.
Right. And that also means that you have to have some kind of substance. You have to be able to give something as well as be open to receive in those
Absolutely.
types of relevant relationships. And I see that you have definitely did that for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Now, I also saw that your aunts had a lot to do with helping your mom with you. Were there challenges as a teenager? Were there challenges as a teenager? Because I know I have all types of listeners, and a lot of
Sure.
them don't know where to go. They're always looking ahead, but the vision is cloudy. And
Right.
yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So it's true. I was the only child of a single mom, and I had 7 aunts who were amazing. And my grandmother, just a amazing perspective and vision, and the way they treated people, the way they were able to move through society was very impressive. My mother, I just like to refer to her as just a fierce angel, just absolutely fierce in ways that it's hard to describe on a short show like this. But I will say that I was all boy growing up in those days. And we didn't have a label like ADHD and the medication associated with it, though clearly we had people with ADHD. The medicine for me was, boy, go get that switch. Boy, bring me my belt. And so when it came down, thankfully, with my aunts, their creativity and willingness to let me come stay with them for different periods of time allowed my mother to keep the structure and the discipline in the household that created a space for me to make my way into the very structured Navy that I was in and still be successful.
Yes, and you mentioned that your ADHD turned out to be your superpower.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
The thing is that if I was stuck in those left, right, lateral limits that the military laid out for me, then I could have never excelled. I wouldn't have considered the innovative ideas and the ability to look at chaos, what some people might describe as chaos, and find the patterns in there has truly, truly been my superpower. And I didn't know it until later because I was so different than everyone else. But once I realized that that was my power, then I was able to step in it, stand in it, and proliferate it throughout the areas of my responsibility.
I love that, and I love how you are going exactly where I'm trying to go as well. So I too am an only child,
Okay.
and I believe that being an only child, it created me as an introvert because it was just me. I didn't have a lot of people to talk to. I didn't have a lot of family around close by. And you talk about this in your book. And so I would say that my superpower is was being an introvert. I no longer call myself an introvert because when I said it, it made me feel less than, and this doesn't, apply to everyone else, but it made me feel less than. And so once I stopped giving all the titles and succumbing to all of these names and borders, I was able to accept just who I am and move accordingly, right? And so you talk about being an introvert in your book and how that can also be an asset. And
Right.
I agree with that because I am so observant. I look
Mm,
at the details. I am able to find different types of solutions and just, gather those insights and come up with something that benefits everyone.
right. It's interesting, and it might sound odd to some people to hear me say introvert and ADHD in the same sentence, but still accurate. And it just so happened that 4 days into the world's finest Navy, they asked, "Hey, does anyone here want to be a squad leader?" I put my hand up, and I led people for 33 years consistently without a break. And so I found myself in a profession or with professional responsibilities where I had to behave with extrovert tendencies, and that is to talk to people. And so being able to sit back and find that peace in the solemnity of my own space was also, so I hear you clearly when you consider how that gives you the power of creativity and innovation without disruption. That's a big deal.
Yes. Oh, I love how you said that. Yes, yes, yes. Wow, you've worded that amazingly. Okay.
No, thank you.
So
Hey, Kim, one thing I want to clear up too, because if people Google me and they'll find out, my nephew is on the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame ballot and all these other things. They're like, "Well, he said he was an only child." True, I was raised as an only child, but around 37, just before I turned 40, I met my biological father, and I became one out of 10 rather than the only one. Though the foundation of being an only child is still there. As I grew into age, I had the privilege of meeting brothers and a sister who's since passed away, and my biological father, who also just recently passed away.
yes, condolences to that. I do recall, yeah, when I reached out to you during that time period. So definitely condolences to you and your family. And thank you again I know your family's like, hey, what about us? So for sure, it's good to mention that. And that was while you were in the military that you
Right,
seemed, okay,
right.
perfect. There's so many different ways that I want to approach this. But I really want to talk about, so we're already into the military and how you were raised and all of that, but your perspective, your mission, and your vision. So
Sure.
so your mission now is to inspire organizational leadership to build safe, innovative, and inclusive workplaces, from the frontline leaders to the executive suite. And
Right.
what caught me and what I so agree with is you started from the frontline leaders to the executive suite instead of vice versa. Many times people want to address and start from the executive suite and work down. Can you explain why it's so important to start at the frontline leaders?
Absolutely. So when it comes to culture and climate, climate is that feeling that people get when they pull up to the place of employ and their tires hit the bumper stopper, and they get out and they start walking towards that building. That feeling that they get when they put their hand on the door and open it up to go into that space, or they wake up in the morning, they log onto their computer, the expectation and the feeling that they get as they anticipate that first interaction, whether it be with the first line leader or their peers or whomever, that is what I would describe as the climate. The culture is a top down situation. So the culture is, I believe it was Ford who said quality is job one. That was the culture that they wanted to imbue throughout their organization that came from the C suite down to the organization. The thing is that the climate is what allows the culture to thrive. And so from my perspective, when we begin to explain leadership, and some would call it a leadership domain, to the frontline leaders, they are the ones who allow that culture to thrive, and the leadership, the mission, vision, guiding principles, and those things that come from the executives, it's them who make it work. And so who's really, the most important when it comes down to ensuring that the culture is sound, and that the organization is fruitful and successful, regardless of the metric. So if the metric is retention, frontline leader is key in making sure that's accurate. If the metric is production, again, it's the folks who have their hand on the gears to ensure that those products are out on time, efficiently, effectively, and safely. And so, to me, it's crucial that organizations are very intentional on how they groom those frontline leaders, mid-level leaders, because it's really them that make it all happen.
I so agree with that. And when you talk about the culture being created at the top and the climate being created at the front line, they're all walking through the same front doors of that building,
Talk
right?
about it. Yeah.
So, how do we get the leaders to understand and to recognize that, hey, this is the culture, the expectation,
Mhm.
but this is the current climate? How do we get them to be open, to hear, and also take action and require it below?
Sure. What happens is organizations need to call out, to myself and Kim Solutions and get a leadership audit. That's the first thing they need to do. Get a leadership audit so they can see the stability of their leadership piece. Fast learning organizations, Kim, they do four things really well. They see, they solve, they share, and they provide feedback. That feedback, when you have a psychologically safe workplace, that feedback can come from any level within the organization, and it will be received and considered. It's one thing to say you can put a note in the suggestion box. Okay. But to put a note in the suggestion box and then that suggestion be reviewed, considered, and then feedback provided to the person who lifted it into that suggestion box, that's a whole nother level. That's people talk about good to great. Okay. That's a level of excellence that organizations who are highly successful are intentional about. And so the way we walk into those same doors, hit them same bumper stops, and ensure that culture and climate is aligned is with the right level of dignity and respect being laid out for everyone within the organization. And then that creates a space for that psychological safety and the feedback loop that we need to be our best selves.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I just recently interviewed Miss Gray, first name,
Yeah, first
first
name
name
Miss.
Miss, middle name period, last name Gray. It was a pleasure to meet with her, and she is a consultant at Kim Solutions right along with you. And in that interview, I was asking her about there's a difference between having an open door policy and having open conversation. And she said,
Right.
I'm going to let you leave that question, that topic to you. Because I understand, and this whole podcast is really about my experiences in corporate America. And that's why I do what I do, because I want to see that change. I want
Yeah.
those that are coming behind me to not have to deal with all of the challenges that I had to go through. I had
Right.
great leadership, as well as those that needed a little work.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so yes, I saw where the words were, "We have an open door policy," but that wasn't the action, that wasn't the compassion, and,
Right.
sometimes you would get punished for even trying to approach or be innovative and things like that. Can you please talk about the differences between those 2?
Well, let me tell you what. So every now and then in leadership, especially when you're talking to a group of people, you may have a spontaneous utterance. And, for me, I was standing in front of the crew on board Harry S. Truman, the aircraft carrier, and someone asked about an open door policy. And I was like, I do not. Nope. I don't have an open door policy. And the clutching of pearls and the gasps that came after that statement. And I said, I'll tell you what, though. If you see me walking around the ship, feel free to, stop me and ask whatever that question may be. I had learned it through reading. I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said there's something called leadership by walking around. And so what I had begun doing earlier in my career when it came down to a higher levels of leadership was to walk around and talk to people and have conversations. And so when I initially said that on the carrier, they were like, up in arms. I can't believe he's not going to have an open door policy. But the next thing you know, they would see me in the common eating area during lunchtime, the most highly traversed area on the ship. They would see me in the hangar bay again, so if you think about an aircraft carrier, it's about the size of the Empire State Building. But if you just kind of scrape out maybe 2/3 of the office space in the Empire State Building, you put a hangar bay where we do maintenance on aircraft and a nuclear a nuclear generator, then that is an aircraft carrier. So they would see me walking in that area where we do maintenance on aircraft, which is huge. And so they realize, this is way better than trying to get time in his office or standing in line or knocking on the door or, meeting with his executive assistant. I could just walk up on him. And the conversations that people were able to have, the suggestions that I got as I was walking around, and their ability to not just run and complain about leadership, but just to ask questions because they didn't know. And so as a leader, one thing I learned early is I don't want to be the senior person with a secret. And so as I walked around and junior folks would ask me questions that I could just openly, honestly share with them those things that, was clear for them to know and understand, that just made the culture and climate weave themselves together in a way to where everyone felt as if they were clued in just on the strength of me doing it. Now, not just because I was the command master chief, but because I was the command master chief and I was encouraging all the other leaders to do the same thing. Now, if they had open door policy, I wasn't saying don't do it, but I was saying walk around, let people see you, ask you questions, and we could create a space that was an intellectual space that was just higher than people not knowing and waiting to find out through a message board or something.
Oh my goodness. Which means
It was
that you
crazy.
have to be approachable. You have
And
to
that's
be.
Oh, Kim, the number of times people were like, "You're just like a regular dude." I'm like, yeah."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they would tell me about other people. I'm like, I got nothing to do with them. What I do know is me and you can win this thing if we have this conversation. And it just created a space. And the Navy is very hierarchical. There's very, very structured as to who's who and what's happening. However, from my perspective, there's great value in there being places of flatness, places where people can just walk up on you, ask a question, get a considerate response, and then keep the party going. And so that's what we did.
Absolutely. And so you have basically just kicked out the open door policy because that open door really means that there are limitations.
Fact. Talk about it. That's the thing. That's the reason. That's the whole reason. Because
That's
I had security at that door. Gatekeepers ain't what they call it now, but I had, you are not walking up on me. That's for sure. Not if I'm sitting down.
oh my goodness. I definitely love that, and that gives me a different way of looking at it as well, because I was more focused on there not being that open conversation or open door when really we don't need it. We all need to be approachable and available when necessary.
Right. And one thing I would add to that is being predictable. And so there's a certain times of day where people knew that I'd be out and about and looking to have conversations and observing various different things. And so that predictability is another thing that fortifies organizations when it comes down to morale, for example.
Yes, and all of the examples that you provided so far are examples of how you say that your perspective stays on leadership. So you're not looking for anyone else to make any adjustments. It's really responsibility of the leader to observe and to see what the needs are and make those necessary adjustments.
Absolutely. I think that people respect when you treat them with the platinum rule. So I grew up learning the golden rule is to treat people the way you want to be treated. And what I would say now, and this is a phrase that I got from Gary Sanchez and Dan Dominguez at the Y Institute, the platinum rule is treating people the way they want to be treated. And so when you walk around and you interact with people, you can find that out.
Yes, and I heard that. I did hear that, but my question would be for the platinum rule is how can you apply the platinum rule if you haven't met them yet? You really don't know.
Right.
You
That's the thing. That goes back to what we were talking about, relevant relationships.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so you do have to have okay, okay, because I was thinking you have to apply the golden rule first before the platinum, but the platinum includes introducing yourself and understanding and being available.
Right. And I don't know if anyone would disagree that it's okay to start with gold and go to platinum. So, well, I think we can both stand, 10 toes down on let's start gold and then intentionally make our way to platinum, not seeking to stay at gold.
Okay, I love that. Okay, thank you. That's something that I need to make a note of for sure, because I can definitely see that new viewpoint for sure. And don't please forgive me. I am looking at all of my notes that I have taken. There is so much on your thoughts on leadership and becoming an overcoming leader.
Mm.
Overcoming leaders, you have to count the cost before it's time to pay the bill. You have to be visionary. I love that because oftentimes leaders can just always just look at the vision and they are just focused on the goal. But you also have to take account of the steps, the actions, the cost that it will take to get there.
Right.
What is it that you learned in your years of service and then applied in corporate to where you have all these different frameworks. You have the ABC, the attitude, belief, and character. You have all of these different frameworks. What was it mostly your experience? Was it you working as a chief human resource executive where you were able to hear other people's stories and pain points? How did you get to all of these frameworks?
It has been a shared experience. Yeah, some would say that the safest way to learn something is by watching someone else. And there have been occasions where I have been able to watch others, and then there's been other occasions where it was my responsibility to build that plane in flight. And so when it comes down to the frameworks that appear to work most successfully, then those usually are things that I have experienced myself or was very closely next to a leader and observed the way she moved through the challenges that came before them. The attitude, belief, and character. I mean, if you consider that your attitude determines your altitude, okay, that's easy to apply. My grandmother used to say, if you believe, boy, you can achieve. And then the character, I mean, your character is going to precede you. So what's your reputation? And when leaders consider those three things, then that creates a space for them to ensure that they can self-correct if they feel themselves drifting. And it allows them to create space for other people, peers, especially seniors and even juniors in some situations, to correct them if it seems like there's a bit of a drift that's going on. Again, there's times and places where there should be a flatness when it comes to approachability. And when it comes to maintaining course and speed, that's a place I think is critical that successful, great leaders allow themselves to be corrected. And those frameworks are just in place to ensure that they are attaining those objectives, those objectives, and whether they be, weekly, monthly, annually, or whether those objectives are tightly adhered to the vision of the organization. It's important that you continue to keep your magnetic north headed towards those. The thing is not losing sight of the mission. And so if the vision is out there, the vision for Kim Solutions, for example, is to change the world. We plan on doing that by changing from the workplace outward. So that's a way, right? But the mission, well, today my mission is to do Kim Knight's podcast and do it well and represent myself. That was the mission for today. Looking over the calendar with Miss Gray and considering the things that we have coming up into the future with intentionality and with a good strategy to get there. That was the mission for the day. But the overall vision, keeping my eye on the prize is still very, very important. And I would encourage leaders to realize, yes, you have that vision that's out there, and then you have the mission things that you do from day to day to get there.
You mentioned so much just then. So I want to go back to when you talked about reputation and also about learning from those that are close to you. You mentioned that I don't have the name in front of me, but someone told you that it's important for you to speak truth to power.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you look at you. So, Harry Hingham Highfield, who was a Navy pilot, Admiral Highfield, created that space for me. He told me, he said, when I was a captain in the rank structure, you go from captain to admiral. He said, when I was a captain, people stopped telling me the truth. And, I whispered to him, I was like, well, I'll be a huckleberry. If you need somebody to tell you the truth, I'll be that person. And then as I made my way higher into the ranking position, then it was my turn to tell that to other people. And so creating that space where people understand that you're approachable, as we discussed earlier, and that they can share with you, extremely, extremely important. And when it comes to speaking truth to power, as a leader, realizing that you have to create space for people to tell you that. There's a super quick story I remind you of, and that is about Marcus Aurelius. When Marcus Aurelius was Caesar, he had a person walking alongside of him everywhere he went, because when Caesar was in power, they were treating him like a god, throwing, flowers and what have you in front of him and treating him as if, he came down from Mount Olympus. That was what being Caesar was all about. Very similar in leadership. Once you make it in the Navy to Master Chief or the Admiral or whatever, people start treating you beyond. The thing is he had someone walking beside him that said, "You're only a man. You're only a man." Always reminding him that, yeah, you're getting treated this way, but you're only a man. When it comes down to leadership, keeping an eye on that vision that's way, way out there, having people around you who realize and know that there's a safe place for them to speak truth to power, crucial. And again, the difference between being good, great, and excellent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm always speaking about speaking truth to power, challenging the status quo. I know there are many in the workplace who have tried or who are scared, but also, even if you do speak that truth to power or want to, we all have to recognize that our voice is expensive and
Mm,
it's priceless
mm,
because it can cost you whatever it is that you are currently in, unfortunately, right? And so I just want people to know that, it is very important for you to speak truth to power, but while it's expensive, it's also priceless. So I say go for it. And it also depends on your own values. You talk about having your own values. So what are you really standing on? Before we got on this call, you were talking about standing 10 toes down. So it comes down to who you are at your core.
mm. And being okay if that's different than everybody else that you're around. One of the things that I do at Kim Solutions is teach people help them discover their why. And I give them a simple statement. My statement, because it's a why, how, and what. My why in life is to find a better way and share it with other people. How I do that is by challenging the status quo and traditional thinking. What I ultimately bring is a contribution either to an individual or to an organization. Now, to say that today, I'm 10 feet tall and bulletproof. But to say that as a junior sailor who is submitted to the Uniform Code of Military Justice and the rules and regulations, that are required by someone of a junior rank, that's no, that there is no better way and share it. It's do it because I said so. And so learning and realizing, okay, what are my personal, values and being able to stay true to those, even if I can't be the challenging the status quo person that I am naturally, even if I cannot be the better way person, that I might be naturally. And it's not at all going along to get along. What it is determining whether or not whatever the task or the job is in line with your values at the big picture. And I would encourage people not necessarily to look for a job that they love, but look for a position that aligns with their values so that they can have a measure of satisfaction and fulfillment when they're done with their job.
Absolutely. I realize sometimes you have to really look back and not just point the finger at everyone else, but look at your own decisions that you've made and and what you have done to lead up to that point. And what I realized in my downtime was that it started with the resume. It started with putting in there everything that they said they wanted. Right? Even though it agreed with who I am and my qualifications, but it's also important to put in that resume who you are so that you can avoid some of those pitfalls so that they know from the get-go of who you are, what you stand for, how you operate, how you think, and we do have that responsibility to make sure or do what we can to make sure we're placing ourselves and becoming available in those environments we really wanna be in.
Agreed. Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Yes, yes. So hierarchy, you said, is dead, should be flat and agile.
Mm.
I want so I it was in your book, and I don't wanna give too much because I want people to go and get it, and as a matter of fact, I have it right here so everybody can see it.
Nice. Look at us.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes, so I have it right there.
Thank you.
Um, I've never been to the continent of Africa.
Mhm. Oh,
I really wanna go.
yeah. Let's go.
For sure, for sure, I am down with it. I
Mm,
noticed that in your book, you mentioned that you have 3 daughters and a
I do.
son,
Yeah.
and you mentioned their names, Nile,
Yep.
Nairobi,
Yeah.
Zaire,
Yeah.
What is it about those countries or that river? Was it the beauty in it? Was it memories? Why did you name your children that? 'Cause I know that you were serving in over those areas.
Right. And, it turns out too, my son, his name is Raymond Jr. I wanted to name him Cairo, but I couldn't think of anything cool to go with it. And so he ended up getting stuck with Raymond Jr. However, I decreed on that same day that his nickname shall be Cairo. And so the whole family calls him Cairo and I call him Raymond Jr. But the the thing is that my eldest daughter, Alexandria Nile, and again, it's Alexandria Nile, Celeste Nairobi, Mahogany Zaire. And so the reason that they were named is because Africa is the mother to earth, queen of the universe, right? And so I wanted their names to land. And, and if we, just ease into, Nairobi, and Zaire, being at the heart of Africa, the fertile lands that we very rarely hear about. And if we lean into the Nile River that has such great history, is written about over and over again. If we lean into Cairo, the city, of the pyramid and the libraries, then, it all makes sense. And the intention was to create a name that they would be able to live up to and beyond.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you just a super quick story is that when Mahogany was in college, she went to Radford University. She called me one spring and said, "Daddy, just so you know, I'm going to Egypt for spring break." And I think she was anticipating what are you doing? Going that far and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, "For real? Yes. Where are we going? You want me to meet you there?" And she's like, no, me and my friends are going, whatever. I was like, "Okay, well, just tell me where you're going." And she gave me the details, you fly out here and we're staying at this hotel, so on and so forth. So I called my buddies at the State Department. I was like, "Yeah, my daughter's going to be in
Guys out.
town." And so I was getting calls every day saying, "Okay, they went here, they saw this and blah, blah, blah." I was like, no, I don't need all those details. I just want to make sure that they're safe. And during that trip, she went to Cairo and had the opportunity to see the pyramids. And again, in my heart of hearts, my hope was that they would make their way to the continent and see for themselves, and they did. Or she has done that.
And I know the rest will follow for sure.
No
For
doubt.
sure.
No.
Now staying with your book, when I was reading, and again, I don't want to give away too much, but I have so much underlined and starred because there's so much that I am in agreement with. And I'm
Mhm.
thankful for all the tools and the tips that you also put in here.
Sure.
So for everyone that is out there that are looking for guidance in how to lead a team, for your magnetic north, this is the book to get. And it gives you all kinds of tools and tips, and it's based off of his experience. I mean, there's not many people out there that can say that they are under a leader who has led over 50, 60,000 people. You have the experience. You have the knowledge, the wisdom, and it's really just an honor to have you. I thank you again for coming. I have so many other questions, but I do not want to keep you. You have on here, leadership is not about visibility or position. It starts before the title, and we have mentioned that.
Right.
I spoke to some college students at UT Dallas several weeks ago, and I spoke to them and I acknowledged who they were. I wanted to make sure that I acknowledged them, that they're not just future leaders. They are current leaders because many of them are leading in their peer groups, in their communities. And so it's just important for everyone to know that it's really not always about your title. It's who you are and what you represent before you even get the title. And the
Right.
title helps open those doors along the way.
Sure. Yeah, that's very well done, and especially when it comes down to letting people know that you see them. Miss Gray oftentimes will say, "Are you present? Are you able to see those folks that you're with, and are you hearing them?" And when we are able to do that with intentionality, that connection to people they will allow you to lead them before you have that title.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One last point that I made at this speech at this campus, and I want to get your opinion on it.
Okay.
I stated that accountability is great. A lot of us have accountability partners and, we're holding each other accountable. But I also said that ownership is greater
Mhm.
because accountability is an external force of holding each other accountable. And I know that you have that military background. What do you think about my statement about ownership, about it being coming from within, that internal push? What do
Right.
you think about that?
Love it. I'm stealing it. I can't wait to use that. The that intrinsic drive is from my perspective is what allows our resilience to be fortified. From my perspective, resilience is like a snowball going down a hill. If you took a ball bearing and put it at the top of the hill, a snow capped mountain, and rolled it down, it's going to roll down and it's going to get to the bottom, and that's going to be the end of that. But a snowball, you ball it up and you roll it down, it's going to collect other snow and it's going to become bigger and bigger and bigger. And resilience, when it comes down to, gaining traction, should allow us to become stronger. In the book, I don't know if you saw it in the book, I mentioned that it's one thing, someone who is consistent and persistent can stand in the rain and perhaps even stand in the rain without an umbrella. But someone who is resilient learns how to dance in the storm. And that is just very, very different. And it comes from within. That is not something that a peer group can do for you. That's not necessarily something that your accountability partners or, that list of to-do things that you have on the wall. No, no, no. It's where's your heart? And that goes back to what you mentioned earlier about having values, solid core values allow you to adhere your heart and mind to a responsibility and own it. So I'm digging that a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to make sure I want to get the feedback from somebody who's far more experienced than me and understand that. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So yourself and Miss Gray, can you tell us what you're working on now with Kemp Solutions with leadership training and coaching and a little bit about the difference between the two?
Sure. So I'll start with the latter, right? The difference between the training and the coaching. The leadership training is, let's lay out a pathway for you to be successful. Here are ways to do it, really more about routines and strategies. And then when it comes down to the coaching is more of, it's more malleable. I mean, there's more, exchange back and forth between client and myself or with Miss Gray. And what that will do is allow you to take the principles that you might learn in a training environment and then apply them practically. And so shared experience happens there. And then those of us who are riding alongside you when it comes down to those challenges, that's what the coaching is really about. Lots of questions and times for consideration. Now, what we're working on now is really exciting. So
Okay.
we have Kim Solutions has just established a leadership stability audit. So
Ah,
let's say a company or a board is considering the leadership that they have in place and wondering if they're stable and whether that means enduring something new or perhaps a shift, or if they're building, to expand their company and they want to ensure that they have the right leadership in place. We can come out, do the LSA, which is a leadership stability audit, and based on the strength of that audit, provide advisory services that will be helpful in the next steps. And so private equity firms who are buying out companies are often asking that question. And we are the industry standard when it comes down to performing the audit and then giving those advisory services to those organizations. Something else that we're working on is just drilling into the specificity of the speaking, training, and coaching. We continue to do that. And we're building out some courses that will be available here very soon for folks to just go from business to client. So if there's a person, one of your listeners now, who wants to go to a website and take a course to increase their, leadership skills and awareness, then we'll have those lifted here before the summertime. And so I'm looking forward to those things. Those are the biggest things. We are on a calendar right now, and I'm not sure how what's happening with our relationship with the University of Lancashire and John Moore's University over in Manchester, the UK, not too far from Liverpool. So they're having a leadership conference, and we are going to be day 1 and day 2 keynote speakers there. So when that date becomes available, we'll make sure we let everyone know. And we're also connected to the several universities in the area that may create some more opportunities to speak there. So it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time for Kemp Solutions. I'm super duper happy to have Miss Gray riding alongside and, giving guidance and opening doors that I just wouldn't even consider going through if I didn't have a strong teammate and partner like her.
That is beautiful. You all make a wonderful team. It is very exciting news for everything that you have rolling out and your future engagements. And I just wanted to say thank you again. Before I close, one of the things that you mentioned and what I agree with is that empathy is so important in leadership. And I know a lot of people are asking, can empathy, can it be taught? Or is it something that has to just be within you? And are there any leadership teams where you've had to back away from?
There have been some asks that I've said no to.
Okay.
And I would say that the occasions where I have said no, it's because it just didn't align with my personal values and the standard and values of Kim Solutions. And so those are no. When it comes down to teaching empathy, the answer is, this is going to be a little bit of a long yes. Yes, you can teach people empathy. And what happens is it just comes down to just creating a space of awareness. When you're aware that you should take the time and consider these things, that is where empathy can be built and taught and coached and created in leadership. And when it comes down to those who consider themselves to be empathetic, who are in leadership positions, and they might have a peer or a subordinate or even a senior that they don't feel is empathetic, I just offer 10 two-letter words that will make them a better leader, and certainly impact hearts and minds. And those words are, if it is to be, it is up to me. And so when it comes down to sharing and creating a space of care, then empathy is crucial. And those 10 words, again, if it is to be, it is up to me, are applicable.
Outstanding, outstanding. You all, everyone who is listening, you've heard the gems, you've learned the experience, you see it, he's lived it. If you are looking for leadership training, if you need guidance, if you have a great team, but you just need that additional help, contact Kemp Solutions. Please give them your contact information and where they can reach out to you.
Sure. I'm available on all socials at Raymond D. Kemp. I'm also on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place to reach out to me as, again, Raymond Kemp, retired Fleet Master Chief. And that's where I write articles, sometimes on medium.com as well. But those are the best place to reach out. Oh, and the website, of course, which is kemp-solutions.com.
Perfect. And all of that will be in the description below when you watch this. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that today I learned that Reverend Jesse Jackson passed today. He was a frontline civil rights movement activist. Condolences to his family. And look at where we are today.
Indeed. It was he who gave me the words, I am somebody. And I will maintain those words as long as I'm able to think them out loud and say them out loud to myself.
Yes, yes. You all, thank you so much for joining the KimUnity Soulutions podcast. You have been listening to my guest, the Honorable United States Navy Fleet Master Chief, retired Raymond Fleet Kemp Sr. Thank you so much for joining me.
Been my pleasure.